problem of rural isolation isn't a new one, and despite the increase in car ownership, there are still many people dependent upon infrequent bus services. In some cases, there are no bus services at all. We looked at what this means to the people of one small Sussex village. Have you got a car?
No, well we have, but it doesn't work.
So how do you manage?
Well, we catch the bus or we get a lift.
And does that cause problems with visits to doctors and things like that?
Yes, you have to fit them in with the buses, and sometimes it's just not possible. You know, you either have to scrounge a lift or miss it.
So can I ask you what you do for transport?
Well, being at school, we have to go to town, we have to take a train or taxi or cycle or walk.
All right.
That's the only solution.
Yeah, well, it's a bit expensive, you see, but we only go once a term or something like that.
So would you say that your social life's limited by the fact that there isn't very much transport?
It is very limited.
Being in a small community like this, I think you need a bus service through
It's
to
not
get
bus
to the main
service
towns.
around here at all.
Not all villages are totally without their entertainment, and often there are some services such as the village shop. But to make use of things which most of us take for granted involves travel. And if you're without transport? How do you think it affects your life then?
Makes no difference really, because I keep going, we've got to put up with it. Can't do no changing of it.
So you can't see any improvement?
No, not yet a while anyway.
Yeah, olden days are better than now.
Can I ask you how you manage for transport living here?
Push bike. Yeah, push bike. That's all I use is a push bike. Yeah.
And how much does it cost you every time to go and see the doctor?
65 pence. Bus.
It's a lot of money.
Return. Yes, that is a lot of
It used to be
money.
9p return.
Used to be 6 ones on time, they kept going up.
Then we had the soldiers' villages here in the war. That was fun.
Would you like to see any sort of improvement in the services locally?
Well, we could do, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could. Yeah.
What about visiting friends or your family?
I got there, no transport.
So you
They've seen them for years. No?
haven't seen them
No.
for years. Would you like to see them more?
A big chance to see one.
One thing there's no shortage of is transport, particularly if you want to travel along trunk routes like this. Since the turn of the century, main roads have improved and developed, and with them have grown better transport links. It's simple economics. The more people want to travel, the more profitable it becomes to provide the means for them to do so. But of course, that's not much help to the people of our small village. Let's call it Dainford. Way back at the beginning, when public transport first began to move along our town roads, some people had a fairly lofty view of the problem. But urban transport gradually began to stretch out into the countryside. They'd go to almost any length to get people from A to B. There was no doubting the popularity of travel, and family outings became a common event. Gradually, a philosophy began to develop, that busy, profitable routes would subsidize the unprofitable rural routes which fulfilled a social need. In 1930, that principle received official backing, and licenses were granted only to those operators who undertook to do precisely that. Gradually, a network of routes spread across the countryside, and villages like Dainford were suddenly on the map, linked to towns and other villages by public transport, often for the first time. And to a lesser degree, it was much the same with the railways. in some places the village bus appeared, providing all the transport needs for a single village or a group of villages. But it didn't stay that way. Railways were the first to get the axe, with many routes subjected to a simple maxim: if it doesn't pay, cut it. And many small towns and villages were thrust back into their previous isolation. Road transport could have filled the gap left by the railways, but it wasn't that easy. Other factors had already started to appear. The 5-day week, increased car ownership, longer holidays. And they all added up to one thing: fewer work journeys and consequently less money spent on road transport. A simple equation followed. Less passengers plus higher costs equals cutbacks. And road transport joined railways in an overly simple book balancing act. And it was the Danefords of Britain which were hit the hardest. By 1960, the problem of rural isolation had begun to show, and an inquiry was set up. Did that provide the answer? No. Nothing more happened for 8 years. Finally, in 1968, grants were introduced in the Transport Act so that bus operators could be subsidised for fulfilling a social role. At last, the answer? It didn't solve the problem. And neither did the Local Government Act of 1972 and the Transport Act of 1978. The 1980 Act removed some of the barriers of competition, which brought down fares on some routes and provided better services on others. But it left Daneford exactly where it was, with no railway and no bus. Lack of transport leads to more than just isolation. It can have far-reaching effects on a small community. Young people simply move away into the towns. The elderly often have to sacrifice their independence, and families have to put up with a social life which is a lot less interesting than they would like. And it's getting worse, with the closure of sub-post offices, small shops, the building of isolated new estates, and the centralising of schools. And it isn't always just a few people who suffer. In some rural areas, as many as 40% have no car of their own. And so poor old Daneford, without its trains and buses, waits for something to happen. Alone, lonely, and in need, but still transportless. Well, not quite. For a start, there's the middle school minibus, which comes to collect Michael every school day. And on the other side of the village, the senior kids wait for the contract coach, which calls just as regularly. Janet needs therapy on her hip, and every Monday rides to hospital in solitary splendour. Tuesday is Miss Browning's turn for hospital, and it's a hospital car and volunteer driver which take her there. Jim calls on Wednesdays to collect Ivy and her wheelchair, her only link with a day centre and friendly company. Every day of the week sees Mrs. Smythe Roberts appear with her Meals on Wheels. Bernard's learning industrial skills at a training centre, and without his neighbour's voluntary efforts, he'd never make it. The courts have had a word or two to say to Paul, and now every Thursday he has to attend the Intermediate Treatment Centre. That's a taxi paid for by the social services. And most days of the week sees their minibus hurrying past on the road to Brampton, just a mile away. So, there's no transport in Daneford. Not much. It's a Piccadilly circus of comings and goings, and each one completely unaware of the other. So much transport, so many spare seats, and it all has to be paid for. Buses and taxis, ambulances and cars. From 2 pence to over £1.50 from the public purse for a single journey. And that's not including the cost of the fare. In all, it costs the authorities in East Sussex nearly £8 million a year. There's a legal requirement for local authorities and county councils to provide some forms of transport, such as school buses, ambulances and social services vehicles. But each department has tended to work with blinkers on, in isolation of what other departments are doing. Back in 1972, and with a further nudge in 1978, central government urged local authorities to get rid of their blinkers and look at the transport they provide as a whole, rather than in a piecemeal way. All shire counties should develop policies which will promote the provision of a coordinated and efficient system of public passenger transport to meet the county's needs. There have been many attempts at plugging transport gaps. As far back as 1975, East Sussex County Council were aware of the problems and took a small step to solve some of them in one area, the Cookmere Valley. Together with community groups and the bus company, they assisted in the development of the Cookmere Community Bus. Has the bus made any difference to your life?
Oh yes, very much so.
Yes? How did you used to manage before?
Well, when my husband was around, we had the car, of course. After that, I used to be able to walk into Hersham and back, and now because of hips, I can't manage that so well. So I get the bus at my gate, and then I can get in twice a week and meet different friends and someone to talk to.
Can I ask you, so the bus actually takes you to your door, does it? Is that right?
Not actually to the door, but to the gate, and then I have a short driveway.
Excuse me, can I ask you the same question?
I'm the odd man out. I'm a friend of the drivers.
You're a friend of the drivers? Wow.
I come to keep him company.
So you've just come for the ride, have you?
In a way, yeah.
Can I ask you, as the driver, as long as it doesn't disturb you too much as you're going along, who do you think this sort of service has helped most?
Well, all the outlying villages. You see, that's what it's done for, is to help the outlying villages where there's no proper bus route at all. Some of these places we go, right to Chelverton, all around there's no bus route at all. Therefore, I mean, they're stranded in one sense unless they got their own transport.
Right, I believe you're going to get off first. So can I ask you, has the community bus made any difference to your lives?
Certainly, yes, it has.
Has it? How did you manage before?
Well, I've had a car really, and now I can't afford to run a car. And without the bus, I wouldn't get into Chelverton at all. Wednesday, you'd have had more chat.
The community bus is a step forward, a good step, but it isn't the whole answer because it doesn't form part of a fully coordinated transport service. Following the 1978 Transport Act, East Sussex County Council wasted no time, and in 1979, together with the Department of Transport, commissioned the Lewis Area Public Transport Study, the first step in looking at transport as a whole. Its aim was to identify people's needs for transport and then the transport services which were actually available, bringing the two together in the most efficient way. Theory became reality under the name ESCORT, East Sussex Coordinated Rural Transport. Chris Brown, group engineer, was closely involved with the study. So, Chris, what did the study show?
It told us a lot about ordinary buses, trains and taxis, which we all recognise as public transport, but it also told us a lot more about some of the other transport services that are available that we've seen earlier. The study also gave us a lot of information about people's needs for transport, their real needs, and I think that gave us a much better way of being able to plan services to meet those needs properly. And finally, I think it gave us a better way of organising our thinking to the planning of services, based on the idea of a trunk network of the main services, complemented by of all the other transport services that we've seen.
Any surprises?
Certainly the amount of voluntary transport available surprised us. Anything from informal lift schemes to very highly organised community bus services which provide an ordinary bus service but using volunteer drivers. The one that operates in the Cookmere Valley is a good example, for instance.
What were the main conclusions?
I think the main conclusion was to try and achieve far better coordination.
And what does that mean?
I think it's a matter of avoiding the duplication between various services and also bringing people together, those who have got transport and those who need it.
How?
Let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, Westmeston Village lost the better part of its ordinary bus service. Nearby Westmeston, there's a social services home where there are two minibuses based. They're used for ferrying people to and from the home in the morning and in the late afternoon. By bringing the social services people and the villagers together, we were able to set up a community bus service using the vehicles when the social services home wasn't using them, and providing a much needed transport service for the villagers who needed to go shopping and the children who needed to go to school, who were otherwise left in the lurch when the bus service disappeared. We're hoping to extend that idea by introducing what we call a brokerage service to assist people to get together in that way even more.
The brokerage idea seems so simple. On the one hand, people need transport, and on the other hand is all the transport available. School buses, ambulances and taxis, as well as scheduled transport. Combined together in a computerized directory, transport needs can be matched with transport available almost at the touch of a button. Local mini-brokers act as coordinators for specific areas. Dainford, for example, could have one person responsible for all the comings and goings. She will coordinate these with the main broker sitting at her computer.
What transit service does the client need? Wheelchair and door-to-door. And what date is that? 13th of June. Just a moment, Alice, while I see if there's anything suitable. I can book her into a vehicle to get her there by 9:30 if she can be ready at 8:50. Thanks, Alice. I've made the booking. Thank you for calling.
One of the men behind ESCORT is Dennis Charnock, county engineer for East Sussex. I asked him if they'd come up with the definitive answer to rural transport problems.
Well, we certainly don't claim to have come up with the definitive answer, but we have got an answer, we believe. One thing is clear. The problem of rural transport is a very serious one because there are people in the countryside who are deprived of being able to get to doctors, being able to get to schools, being able to get to the shops. Now, we've made many attempts to solve this problem, and I believe that we, for the first time, have approached this in a very radical way.
And you consider the ESCORT approach is a radical one?
Oh, yes, it's radical. It's very radical because we're hoping to break down departmental boundaries at national and at local level in order to get the best use of the available resources. We have involved with us the Transport and Road Research Laboratory. They will be monitoring the work, and in addition to that, we're hoping that when they've done that, they will be able to use it not only here in East Sussex, but across the country as a whole.
And it's the broker who's at the heart of this radical approach?
Oh yes, the broker plays a fundamental role, but the broker is certainly not the be-all and end-all of the project. We're interested in coordination by the broker, but we're going to replan all the services on a coordinated line. And the ESCORT team are still looking at the needs of the local areas, and when they've done that, they will redesign the services. The new services will be developed, each suited to the particular need. And indeed, if you'll excuse the comment, it's horses for courses.
Where does voluntary transport fit into this?
Well, we hope that the voluntary organisers and drivers will play a part. Of course, we must not bulldoze them into it. We must not be bureaucratic in our approach to the voluntary organisers. But we're looking for getting the best value for money across the whole spectrum of the transport scene. Now, the county rider that we're putting into operation first off will coordinate the services, but unfortunately, this first time, there will not be voluntary organisations involved. But this doesn't matter, because we will get a very good idea of what is going on.
To provide a familiar image, all the ESCORT services will go under the name of County Rider. This could include almost anything, from a voluntary lift-giving scheme to a scheduled bus route, because the ESCORT team and its computer will do much more than simply make use of the transport which already exists. They will compare demand with availability, and where there's a mismatch, it might well involve the complete replanning of services, or even the introduction of new ones. The aim being to provide people with the transport they need, and the ratepayer with value for money. County Rider is the name under which East Sussex has transformed their theory of escort into reality. It's a bus, a school bus, and a social services vehicle. In fact, it combines 5 educational services, 3 bus services, and 1 social service route. The bus provides a completely new service to some villages, a better service to others, and being specially adapted, not only can it pick up disabled people in their wheelchairs, it can actually divert from its route to do so. There's an old saying that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So I asked some of the people who use the new County Rider what it means to them. Can you tell me, how has it affected your life?
Oh, much better. I mean, you can get on it, you can go anywhere, practically. You know, you don't have to wait about, or... Yeah, it's fantastic, it really is.
That's smashing. What did you do before?
Suffered. No, literally, if you didn't catch the bus, hard luck sort of thing. You had to walk a mile for the train.
Do you use the County Rider service?
Yes, I use it once a week as a rule, but it's handy if I want to use it more often, you know, and it does take me around to the station when I want to go by train anywhere.
And what do you use it for?
Mostly shopping.
Can you tell me, do you use the new County Rider service?
Yes, I do.
Regularly?
Yes.
How often and why?
Well, I'm an old age pensioner, and I like to, I like to get to A to B the quickest possible time, and County Rider provides that service.
How did you manage before?
We just stopped in, that's all. We were housebound, in other words.
So would you say that it's made quite a big difference to your life?
Yes, it has. I like to go to cricket occasionally, and when the means are there, so that's what I do.
What else do you use the bus for?
Well, shopping in Lewis and surrounding places. I like to go to Eastbourne occasionally, and also, Brighton. And also, in my case, being a diabetic, I've got to attend, in Brighton periodically, which that helps.
How did you manage to get there before?
Well, we just had to supply a car of the Red Cross, which, being an independent sort of cuss, I, really don't like it. I like to go under my own steam as far as necessary.
Can you tell me, do you think that it's a better service than the normal bus service?
Yes, I do. Because it gives in other words, it doesn't, the village doesn't die out, not really.
And what about the drivers? Are they helpful to you?
Yes, very helpful. Very helpful.
And do you think in quite a different way from a normal bus service?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Everybody knows everybody, and we know the drivers. And, yes, very good.
So is it a different sort of bus service? I mean,
yeah.
Are the drivers different?
Yes, it is. They drop you right outside your door and they pick all your shopping up. And I broke the bus driver's back last week because he picked a great big box of my shopping up, put it on the bus for me. And they always help with the children, help them up the steps. It's really fantastic, it really is. It's made a difference to me, I know that.
Can you tell me, what's different about this bus service?
The main difference is that we pick up old age pensioners, old people, wheelchairs, invalids. We have closer contact with people. We virtually pick up the same people, same days each week.
Can you tell me, have you got special facilities for disabled people?
Oh yeah, we've got a lift at the back for putting on wheelchairs, and if anybody's got on crutches or anything like that, we can lower the tailboard as well to put them on.
Do you think it's a friendlier service because of that?
No, it's a lot friendlier service because, as I said, you pick up the same people virtually every day through the weeks.
So it seems that the first County Rider is providing some of the answers to rural transport problems. It represents, in the true sense of the word, the return of the omnibus.